Good morning or good afternoon to everyone out there. We really appreciate you joining today. We welcome you to the TCN's quarterly webinar series. Today's focus is on TCN's workforce engagement product, which comprises workforce management and workforce optimization. We're very excited to be able to show you what has already been rolled out and some of the things that are coming very quickly here and things that are important. There's a lot of challenges facing people today, challenges with hiring, challenges with retention, challenges with quality control, and we'll like to really try to focus on those topics and how we might be able to handle with that. Each webinar, we take a note of the current contact center challenges and highlight some features that are currently released or coming soon. That will help you address those concerns. As we all know, dealing with agent training, quality control, and schedule management can be a big headache. With TCN's Workforce Engagement Suite, Workforce Management, Workforce Optimization, it'll give you some advanced tools to handle schedule forecasting, adherence, and multiple tools for agent training, quality control. Our presenters today are Dion Applegren and Scott Brownlee. Dion is a product engineer manager at TCN. Despite joining TCN during the COVID pandemic, Dion has successfully launched and implemented a SaaS-based suite of products for a client with tens of thousands of agents and 15 sites worldwide. We're excited to have Dion with us today. We also have Scott Brownlee, who is the TCN's Director of Product Training and Customer Engagement, and is an industry veteran in the call center and financial services industries. During his over 30 years of hands-on experience in the ARM industry, he has focused mainly on the healthcare vertical and has gained a wealth of practical knowledge. We're also excited to get to hear from Scott as well today. With that, we will go ahead and turn the time over to Dion to give you an introduction to what the program is going to be today. Dion?
Okay, I'm going to introduce to you what we call the Workforce Engagement Suite in the bigger scheme of things. TCN's objective is to look at the specific market niche where we are focusing on and allowing people to get a variety of solutions from our own environment, and so that we can keep them in an integrated environment. So in one of these environments is what we call workforce engagement. So within workforce engagement, we are looking at workforce management and the whole workforce optimization environment. And sort of the underlying tagline for this environment is to have the right people at the right place at the right time in an omni-channel environment in the TCN world. And the differentiator there is that everything is integrated into one platform environment, and you don't have to worry about moving around. So a quick overview as to where we are, where we're going, how do we see ourselves. So our workforce management product ranges will typically address the environments of your forecasting, your scheduling, your adherence, making sure that everybody can see what they need to see, portals that is required to put it all together. And that really gives you the basis of being able to look at your load and follow your load with what is required from a people's perspective in your FTEs. On the workforce optimization side, that is sort of driven by our performance management suite. In our performance management suite, we're looking at, on a high level, we're looking at the voice analytics, where transcription plays a big role in the capabilities that we can put together and the features and the functions. And in the second one is, once you've got transcriptions in place, you can then go to automate certain analysis of your transcribed environment, and that's what we call the auto evaluation. And we will talk a little bit about that today with flags, and Scott will give you a lot more detail on that. And then in the next environment, so also the quality evaluation, your scorecard. So those three are sort of the key building blocks for how we will grow our performance management suite over time. All three of these environments is built on the principles of audio, transcriptions, and then as we move along into the future, we'll add learning opportunities and screen recording to that to make it just more detail in terms of what you can see and give you more clarity while you're doing your scorecards in that perspective, or just want to do a straight analysis on the side of what is happening in your agent's world. With that being then in place, we will take our foot into the agent world in terms of learning opportunities, because through the scorecard environment, through the flag evaluations, through the flag reviews, you can, when a human is looking at certain calls and listening to calls and see things, the opportunities will be there for them to say that they can push back and push through the system to the agents things that they see, and we can bring them back into a place where they can go focus on the areas that was identified, learn them, and also work through them to the other side. Okay, so in a nutshell, that our big vision for the workforce engagement is to just help you to improve your customer experience with the quality of your agents, with the availability of your agents. And we are trying to do it. One of the challenges today is that irrespective of the size of the call center, the demand is there to do a variety of features, whether you're small or big. And our objective is to say that in a cost-effective way, we would really like to provide you with these tools, and also then in such a way that you can afford it, but also that it does not put you back and you don't have to worry about the fact that you're not a big call center in the long run and have to compete from a pricing perspective with the big suppliers out there. And the final one is just the core of this is, get to the root of your customer and the employee behavior to help you think about your call center, readjust, the revision, and continuously have a look at where you're at within that perspective. So that is sort of a overview on the engagement. We are now going to step over into the workforce optimization product features, and Scott will take you through the next few slides.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Pleasure to be with you today. I'm going to be discussing our workforce optimization section, as Dion said, and that currently consists of call recording with voice analytics. We'll talk a little bit more about voice analytics here in a second and what it can do. It includes flag evaluations and notifications. And then behind voice analytics, we also have a quality evaluation scorecard application that is set up to allow customers to replicate essentially maybe an existing call calibration scorecard that they have. And on deck for us in the optimization side, which is coming out very soon, is auto risk evaluation, which along the lines of voice analytics, where we may be looking for various things that we're going to talk about, it can actually grade calls on a risk assessment. And with our voice analytics, there's typically two kinds of voice analytics in the world. The first is live, and the other is post-call. And with live, one of the things that I've always noticed is for it to be effective, you have to expect your managers to do nothing but stare at a screen all day and wait for an alert, and then hope they can get to the call in time to intervene, which by the time they navigate to the call, get in with the agent and the consumer, almost always the robber left the bank and they're too late to intervene. So aside from being extremely expensive and ineffective, it just doesn't seem to get the job done for people. So post-call is a much more effective way to handle the actual analytics of calls. And there's two types of post-call. Most voice analytics providers will take your calls for the day, process them overnight, and return results to you the next morning. TCN takes a different approach because our voice analytics platform is TCN engineered and fully integrated, of course, with our operator platform. We're able to start transcribing a call and analyzing a call as soon as your agent dispositions the call, moves out of wrap-up and goes to the next call. The transcription and analysis begins. So we have results that are typically available in minutes. And while the effect there is not live, essentially every 15 minutes or so, a manager can be notified of calls that need attention. So an agent's only going to have probably taken one or two more calls between the point of the call being analyzed and alerted to the manager and the manager being able to intervene. So that call is still going to be fresh for the agent, and the manager can have higher impact on something that's fresh than something that's a day old or a couple of days old. And with our platform in Voice Analytics, we don't believe in a size-fits-all solution. Essentially, all of our customers, regardless of their business vertical, the industry that they're in, we think that they're all unique. And I'm going to use the ARM industry just as an example because it's my background, and I ran collection agencies for 30 years. So all collection agencies need to have regulatory compliance. All collection agencies need to have policies, procedures, work instructions. But each individual agency has its own unique policies, procedures, work instructions, scripts for their agents, and client requirements. So we don't believe in handing over an out-of-the-box solution. We're going to be able to custom tailor our voice analytics platform to each individual client's needs so that it better meets their requirements and delivers more impact for them as a product. So with voice analytics, essentially, we want to look for risk mitigation. Your agents may have regulatory disclosures. They certainly want to be giving call recording disclosures, and you may have even client-specific disclosures that need to happen in a call. And voice analytics can also help you identify agent performance. Are they asking the right questions of the consumer? Are they properly working calls where the payments are involved? When there's disputes, are they handling those properly? Are they handling cease and desist? And we'll get into this in the demo a little bit more. But the third part that you can really look for is agent quality. Are they using the please and thank yous? Are they using the greetings you want them to use? Are they demonstrating empathy in their language? And all of those use cases are capable with voice analytics, and you actually get a 360-degree view of all of your calls. And for those of us in the ARM industry, with the CFPB wanting statistically meaningful review of call recordings, and while that's ambiguous as all heck, if all of your calls are being analyzed in a voice analytics platform, that's a great step in the right direction. And beyond that part, having a manual call calibration scorecard built into the platform will allow us to also then complete that circle so that you can still have those meaningful interactions with your agents on overall calls. And a natural benefit of voice analytics for performance and compliance lift, it's something called the Hawthorne effect. And I'm going to be honest, a lot of it goes over my head, but the part that resonated with me and how it applies to voice analytics is essentially if you have a group of people, in this case being agents, that you're asking to demonstrate a specific set of behaviors on every call, once that group is cognizant of the fact that every call is being evaluated, their behavior and their performance naturally improves because there's no room for error. There's not the old school, we're going to pick 3 calls a month and review them with the agent and hope that's good when the agent really had a couple thousand calls. With our voice analytics platform, it's built on a couple of platforms, pillars. The first is filters, and that's essentially what do we want to look for in the conversations. And then the second platform piece is our flags. And flags currently are used to alert managers that a call has an exception in it, or it has language that needs review or looked at because it could be a compliance risk. It could be an agent not giving a disclosure they needed to in the time frame that they needed to. And it just could be maybe we have a customer that's asking us to cease and desist calling, or in a different vertical, they didn't get their product, or they got their product late, or they're unhappy with the way they were billed. So you're able to really run through all of that and alert managers through our flag system. And then additionally, with that risk evaluation of flags, we're adding that into our evaluation section in workforce optimization so that you'll be able to auto score calls based on flag risks. So as an example, required disclosure given, good, required disclosure not given, bad, and you have repeatable instances of various compliance risks, and it can grade each call as to how effectively the agents are able to adhere to those requirements of your system. The last piece that I just want to touch on for a moment before I actually hop into our demo is the scorecard evaluation. A lot of companies, voice analytics, it's a great solution and it gives you that great insight. But most people that I'm aware of, despite AI and ChatGPT seemingly taking over the world, they don't want Skynet running their organization completely. They want to have human intervention. And our quality evaluation allows that to be integrated into the TCM platform so that we can replicate any type of agent scorecard that you have and build it right in so that you can randomly select calls. And we're going to demo all of that here in a second. So I'm currently in our staging environment in TCN's operator platform. And to get into our workforce optimization, it's as simple as clicking our 3x3 menu here, coming over to workforce engagement and clicking on performance management. And we have our voice analytics and our scorecard evaluations all under performance management. So our landing page is in voice analytics, and it's just showing us a list of the most recent calls that have been transcribed. And we provide some basic information here, such as the agent, the internal TCN call SID, the number that was dialed, the caller ID that was displayed, call length, date, time, how much of that total time was speech and how much was silence, and then you have file sizes. Now, as I had mentioned earlier, the voice analytics platform is built on two distinct pillars, and the first is filters. And with filters, we have quick save filters that can be available for you once you create them, but essentially we'll build these for you to specification. And if we open our filter tab, these are the elements that we're able to utilize that will help you search for the calls that you want. So for example, we have different defaulted date ranges. You can also create custom date ranges, but if I go back 180 days and apply that to the table, I now have 86 calls to go through. You're able to determine and limit by a call type, whether it be manually dialed outbound calls, campaign outbound calls, or inbound calls. So if I just choose inbound and apply that to the table, you can see we've now reduced to 32. You're able to, with your agent hunt groups, select specific hunt groups to limit by. And with your agent skill sets, you're also able to choose through mandatory skills and preferred skills. I'm just going to reset that for a second. And you're even able to decide if you want to look at only a single agent in a particular search or group of agents. And then importantly, we have conversational side analysis. And while we can look at both sides of the call, the agent and the consumer, there are instances where having filters only on one side of the call makes sense. For example, a call recording disclosure is always going to be given by your agent, so we want to only look at the agent side. And when we get into things like profanity, if a customer is using profanity, it's indicative of probably they're not having a really great experience most of the time. And you can combine that with other negative expressions and have a negative call impact on the consumer side. But if your agent on the other side of the call responds with dropping an F-bomb, that's probably more of an important thing that you want a manager to be notified there pretty quickly. So we can build those to look on specific sides of the call, or you can just search the entire call. You also have the capability to search by a caller ID of the consumer and that internal call SID for TCN. And then again, I'm our staging account, so I don't have a lot of campaigns, but if you had specific campaigns running, you're able to even search by down to that level. And once you've decided where you want to search, what do we want to search for? And so I'm just going to come back here and get my 180 days of calls, so I have a little bit more to look at. And if I wanted to match all words, this is looking on both sides of the call, but I'm just going to put in and if I could spell, that would help. And repossess. And it'll bring up from 87 calls. There are 2 calls that have both of those words in the call. If I click on one, it's going to highlight the words that we're looking for in our search. So again, this is only a 52-second call. If it were a 6, 7, 8 minute call, it'll bring you right to this point so that a manager could click right above that if they wanted to. And as you can see, it moves the waveform. So they don't have to listen to the whole call to get to the part that triggered this filter hit. And we have a little bit of a challenge with GoToMeeting and playing audio. So I'm not going to play this only because you won't hear it well, but you're able to navigate through the actual call, which is the recording is at the top here, in increments of 10 seconds, 30 seconds, or clicking anywhere in the call that you want to be to start. Consumers are colored in blue and our agents are colored in orange, and the actual call recording waveform follows that same color scheme. We can have the ability to turn silent spots off, but if you want to see silence time in between specific conversational breaks, you can. Auto scroll can be turned off, but if it's on and you're playing this whole section of the call, it's kind of like the old school follow the bouncing ball on the closed captioning. It'll go ahead and follow the script for you. And when you're in a call, you have the capability to download the recording. You can download the transcript as a TXT file, or if you're ingesting somewhere, you may want to use JSON. So that's matching all words. And if I come back and apply my 180 days back, I'm going to try match any words, and I'm just going to say attorney and lawyer. So now it's looking again on both sides of the call, but it's only looking for is at least one of these words in the call. So if I click that first one, it does not have lawyer, however, it does have attorney, and that same credence follows. The highlight will appear in your screen so that the manager can go right to the point of the call to have a quick listen to determine if a deeper review is required. And then lastly, aside from individual words, we can actually match phrases as well. So this is always a happy one, stop calling. And if we click on one of these, we can see that the consumer says, you know, if you do not stop calling, and they continue on with some other things. You're able to both look for words and phrases that are in the call. And as an example, an agent's expected to give a call recording disclosure. So do you really want to know every time they give the call recording disclosure as they're supposed to? Probably not. You're more likely to want to know when they didn't give it. So in that instance, when you have words and phrases that you're looking for and you flip these exclude transcript keys on, it will find the calls that do not include that particular phrase or set of words that you're looking for. So it allows you to find those exceptions. And no transcription, especially when it comes to call recordings, is 100% accurate. And that's due more to the constraints that are in the bandwidth of the call recording itself than it is any transcription engine. But we do account for, you can have some fuzziness added if you want to account for misspelled words. And if you have agents that utilize or like in the middle of some of their sentences, you can even add extra words to be discounted and find those phrases that you're looking for, even if they say an And when we get to things like call recording disclosure, if an agent has a 7-minute call and at the end of the call says, oh, by the way, Mr. Jones, this call is being recorded and it could have been monitored for quality assurance, have a nice day. That's still missing a call recording disclosure, even though they technically did give it. It needs to be done at the beginning. So you're also able to say, hey, I want to look in the first, say, 30 seconds of the call and make sure that I have that call recording disclosure there. If it's not there and it's not in the first 30 seconds, it's going to kick that out in my filter hit for me as an exception. And for those of us that have TCN already as your call center choice, your agent dispositions, we're adding this in so that you'll also be able to choose specific agent dispositions. And that'll allow you to, for example, on right party, if there's a required disclosure like a state disclosure for language preference or out of statute debt, or there's a prohibition in Colorado for a certain sales disclosure that has to be done. You're able to look for those in the section of the call and have that disposition so that you're looking for it to be missed if the disposition says it should be there. And you would look for it to be there if the disposition says that it shouldn't be. So you're able to actually look at both ways that your agents are performing and make sure that they're adhering to proper utilization of their dispositions and calls, because a lot of your reporting and analytics in business intelligence ends up based on agent dispositions. And then lastly, we have a bunch here with time that people are talking. The two that to me are most impactful are minimum percentage of time that both people are talking, which is also known as overtalk. A good customer service oriented call between an agent and consumer should have very little overtalk. Some is natural. You think somebody finished speaking and you start and, oh, sorry, go ahead. But if you have 4 or 5% of the call being overtalk, could be a combative consumer, but it also could be your agent's not listening. So you can add percentage if it exceeds this threshold to show you those calls, and you can find those instances. And then there's also silence. And silence is a natural piece of calls. Every time you stop talking, in between words, there are little breaks of silence. So silence time can add up. And it's common that there could be 35, 40% of silence in a meaningful conversation. But if you're up at 60, 70 or more percentage of silence, oftentimes that's indicative of an agent maybe struggling in the CRM. They may be struggling to find the right answer to give the consumer, and just generally having an issue that you may want to be able to review those calls as well. So with our filters, as you've determined what you want to look for and you perform some of those searches, you're able to save those searches so that you don't have to keep repeating them. And I'm going to just give a quick look here. I have bankruptcy one, and if we look, my bankruptcy one filter is looking for the words bankrupt or bankruptcy. If I go to my bankruptcy two filter, it's looking for the phrase chapter 7. And I'll show you here. So it's hitting those in here. I should have done that for bankruptcy one. So I'll do that one as well. And we have the word bankruptcy. Then my bankruptcy 3 filter is looking for the phrase chapter 13. So those are the 3 most common ways that a consumer may be trying to let the agent know that they've filed bankruptcy. So I have my 3 filters. Now, a bankruptcy call is one where typically we don't want to keep contacting that person. So if I open our voice analytics drop down, I come to flag management. This is the second pillar that our voice analytics platform resides upon. And what flags do is it allows you to take a filter or combinations of filters, and when those conditions are met, alert a manager to the occurrence. And as we see here, I have bankruptcy mention. So if I open that one up, it's titled bankruptcy mention. I have a review and an occurrence notification turned on. I have it as a high priority, meaning that it's a risk call in my world. We have stoplight colors, so you could use this really how you would choose. Low may not be risk, but it could, green could be, hey, this is good language we're looking for. Middle of the road is, it could be an issue, and then high is something probably bad, typically for most folks. But what we're doing here is in filters, we're using Boolean to run through our saved filter list. And so what this flag is saying is, if that bankruptcy 1 filter or that bankruptcy 2 filter or the bankruptcy 3 filter is found in a call, I want to throw a flag for bankruptcy mention. And in my occurrence notification group, I have a manager here that will get those notifications. You can add managers to notifications if you want. And some organizations may have quality review people and others may have compliance review people. And if you have calls that are high in a compliance risk area, you may choose the review notification, and that I'll show you in a second when we look at a flag call, but that will be a different notification than the occurrence, and it would go to someone who actually is going to review that entire call and then make a note on the call that it's been reviewed. So it's that simple to create the flags. So great, we have our filters built, we have alerts set up for our managers. Where do we find the flag calls? And there's 2 places, essentially flag recordings. And when a manager comes to this section, they'll turn on recordings related to me because this is my staging environment. Unfortunately, they're all related to me, but this gives us a list of calls where filters triggered flags for a manager to review. And the little red circle with the white numbers, it gives the count of flags that were thrown on that particular call. And if I hover there, I can see this call has a bankruptcy mention. There was no call recording disclosure. There's do not call language. There's threat language, and there's a legal action threat. So the manager can click right into that call. And it happened to be a voicemail. The person calls in and left the message. But on the right, you can see we have review flags. So for the threat language, they can come in and look for the threat language, click the locate icon, and it'll bring it right up, and they can put in a note. And they can put whatever it may be in here. And at that point, you'll notice that the review has been completed. For managers that only receive occurrence notifications, they will just get the flag tab. And as an example, do not call, they can come in and locate that language and determine if they have to review the call. So we're narrowing the calls that a manager needs to interact with throughout the day and bringing them impactful calls to review, either good or bad, because voice analytics can also be utilized to highlight great customer service interactions. If you have positive customer expressions, like a customer telling an agent, hey, I love you, that's so fantastic, thank you so much for saving me here, we can look for those situations as well. And what this allows us to do is provide coaching opportunities to our agents when they may be falling a little short of our expectations. And we can then utilize those in our training environment to help people understand where we don't want them to fall short. And then conversely, with our great calls that we find, we're able to celebrate those, because every time we have great calls, we want our agents to know that we're happy that they're making great calls. And secondarily, they're also great training opportunity calls where your training department can utilize those calls for this is how a call should go. So we don't want to rely on alerting managers just having them come to this page. So we also have a Room 303 application that is integrated into voice analytics. And what 303, when we set those occurrence and review notifications, if you came into the operator channel, it gives these various separate items that were flagged to managers. And if you look here, you can see that they're at the top of the hour, quarter past, bottom. So they're coming every 15 minutes to managers. So they're able to go ahead and take a look and say, hey, I have one that says do not call. I want to make sure that the agent went ahead and noted that in the CRM and took the number out. So they're able to click that hyperlink in the notification, and it'll bring them right into that call, and they're able to go right to work. So that they know they're right in the call, right where they need to be. I need to look at my do not call. I'm going to find it. I can then go into the CRM because I have my call identifiers here. and I'm able to quickly make a determination if all the appropriate behavior happened. In a nutshell, that is a high-level overview of our voice analytics platform. And I'm going to move now into quality evaluation. And quality evaluations is essentially scorecards. And we start with a category library, and you can build your own categories. And categories are tied to your agent skill profiles. And again, in this staging environment, I only have one skill profile and manual dialed calls. But you can build quality, disclosures, performance. Sometimes you can see as I test things, I have little goofy ones like fruits and veggies. But once we build a set of categories from which we want to build scorecards upon, we then create questions. And questions are then assigned to a category. So if I wanted to create a new question, does it rain in CA? I can then choose categories that I want this question to apply to, and I'm going to choose my ad hoc and my support inbound call. So just like that, I've created a question. And down at the bottom, here we are, does it rain? So now it's available in both of these categories. So we build categories, we build questions, and then we build the actual scorecard. And the system comes with a default scorecard template that is there, one, to help people understand the way it works, and two, you can certainly copy that and go ahead and rename it. I want to change my passing percentage and save it. I now have a new scorecard that I'm able to edit. And if I come in, I have different sections in my card that I've created. You can create new sections. If I wanted to add one, I could say precipitation as an example. Thank goodness we have spell check built in there too, because I'm apparently not doing real well. And we can evenly distribute the weights across the sections of the cards, or you can set those. If compliance was more important, you can turn this distribute off, and you could change compliance to be a higher weight for the scorecard. The only thing there is it does have to equal 100, so you would have to do some calculations to adjust the other ones accordingly. But typically most folks just use the auto distribute. So if I save that, it's now saying, hey, on this scorecard, we're going to update all of those categories and create this one. So I've now created a new section to my scorecard. And if I come to the bottom, we can see that I have precipitation. It's this simple to add a question. You're able to search your question, so I can just put in rain right to the question that I want. I don't need to add it to my library. NA is to be non-applicable, and I'll show you a little more on that in a second. And you can also have multiple choice selections within an individual answer. So I just put in my answer. I'm going to give it 10 points if it does rain in California, and my other answer no. I've now created a question into that section. On the left-hand side, so we did clone the template scorecard. Maybe I want my agent quality to be above my agent performance. You can just reorder everything in sections by drop and drag. And just like that, agent quality comes up over agent performance. You're able to reorder questions within a category here. I could drag that one down and it'll automatically reorder over here. And maybe I don't want this question in this particular scorecard. I can quickly delete a question and take it out of this card that I'm dealing with. S always wants us to confirm, because I don't know if you guys are like me, but sometimes I get click happy. So we put in some safeties here so that you don't accidentally delete something that you don't want to. And then you're able to preview your card while you're looking at it. And here's where I want to show you how some of those things work before we actually do an evaluation. So this card's built on yes or no questions. Your reviewer could put a comment in here. if they want to when they're reviewing the call. And when we get into the evaluation, that'll flow a little better. But what I wanted to show you was we're in the greeting section. So did the agent provide the call recording disclosure? That may be extremely important to you, that if they did not, it doesn't matter if they use an appropriate greeting, if they ask for the consumer properly and properly identified themselves, they get no credit for this entire section. You can set up one answer, an incorrect answer, to fail a section. And then you can also, as an example here, they have the confirmation of the consumer's identity. In a debt collection case, they're required to use what's known as a mini Miranda, debt collector attempting to collect a debt, and any information obtained used for that purpose. If they didn't, you could actually have a wrong answer fail the entire scorecard where they have 0, if you choose to. And one of the things in a actual scorecard is every single call that gets selected for review, it's not going to be applicable. So for example, New York has, hey, we want to know that you've asked about the preferred language the consumer wants to communicate in. Well, if I'm talking to somebody that lives in Chicago and it doesn't apply to them, I can turn on this little non-applicable when I'm doing a review. It removes the question from this particular evaluation, and it doesn't penalize the agent for not being able to have an answer that's correct for this question. So that's all preview. I'm going to come down now and actually show you how one of these cards works. So we have settings. And what settings does is it allows you to set a maximum number of evaluations per agent per month that you're going to do via this scorecard application. And then we randomize the calls for the agents that are coming back to you. So you can choose a percentage of how many of their calls do you want to look for. So I'm just going to update that. I want to look at all because I don't have a lot, and I'm going to submit that. And then I want the most recent calls available, so I can just click my date calendar, move to today. I'm going to update my table so that all calls that are completed as of this refresh are going to be available for consideration. At that point, I want to move to my quality evaluation. And I'm just going to go ahead and create a new evaluation. So I'm going to evaluate our current month of April. I'm going to evaluate our ad hoc, and I have an abbreviated card here so that you don't have to watch me fill in 100 questions. If I wanted to, I could select specific agents, or I can just bring back my pool of agents. So if I add this, it goes out, searches the call platform, and brings me back calls. I can click on a call. On the left-hand side is our call recording for the manager to be able to listen to. It also has the actual transcription that's available, and then the scorecard is on the right. So this is a short card. I'm going to go ahead and fill it in, and they properly identify themselves. I'm going to say that that wasn't applicable and it's removed. They're using their please and thank you. And right here, let's say I'm a manager and I get a client call and I have to leave this screen. I have the capability to save this evaluation and exit. I have my client call, I come back, I see that I have my incomplete and in progress evaluation. I can come right back in. If I wanted to start over on this call, I could click this little button and reset all of these answers. I'm not going to do that in the interest of time. And then I come in and I fill in my last question, save, and then complete my evaluation. And it will let the manager know if they've passed or failed. If we come back to our all evaluations page, this is where completed evaluations reside. You're able to funnel everywhere there's a funnel, which is on everything, and you're also able to sort by those. So as an example, I'm in this environment, I'm actually Maxwell Smart. So I'm going to say I just want to look at Max's scorecards, and I only care about the ones he failed because he's supposed to pass. And it brings them right to me. I can then choose to just sort lowest score to highest score to lowest score on his failed cards. And if I wanted to review one of those, I could just click on it and my completed scorecard is available for review. I'm going to do one more quick evaluation for you because I've shown some yes or no answers And the platform isn't locked into that type of situation. So I'm going to choose this declarative card and run it also and pick an evaluation. Some organizations don't use yes or no. They may use something like a declarative sentence. So the agent utilized an appropriate greeting, and it could be exceeded expectations, met expectations, or they did not meet expectations. And that could be worth 2 points. That could be worth one of the 2 points, and did not meet 0. So you're able to custom tailor scorecards to your existing platform type that you're using, maybe in Excel or where that may be. And it allows things to be all contained in one place and less reliance on outward vendors. And on deck, currently, all the evaluations, oh, sorry, have to save. All of our evaluations are residing here, and with the funnels and the sorting capabilities, it is also in our on deck to have exportable data from this. So if you want to ingest an agent's data for their scorecard scores for a month or quarter or a year, you'll be able to take those out. I believe it'll be either CSV or PDF, depending on a preference. And in summary, the workforce optimization, the benefits are tremendous, and it increases performance, it increases compliance, it increases policy, procedure, work instruction. It increases just a full circle of your agent behavior, and it performs very well. It's going to expand to omni-channel, so we'll be able to analyze chat conversations in the future. It's fully encrypted. We have on deck also screen recording. So in addition to having the evaluation of the call, you'll also be able to see what the agent was actually doing on the account. They may disposition and have certain filters or flags hit, but they're not necessarily properly documenting that in your CRM. And in the overall workforce engagement, these learning opportunities that we're creating for your agents will end up residing in an agent portal. I don't know if portal is the right word, but an area where the agent will have those opportunities presented to them for review. So for me, that's a wrap on the overlook of our workforce optimization, where we are and where we're headed. And if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to try to answer those for you.
Thanks, Scott. Great presentation. We do actually have some questions for you, so sit back for a second. The first question that came in is, will the screen recording record more than TCN?
Yes, the goal is to record multiple screens. And so essentially, if you want to record the actual CRM and the interaction from the agent moving from TCN to the CRM, you'll be able to do that.
Perfect. And just to encourage anyone that hasn't submitted a question, go ahead and add it into the chat to the side. The next question I have here is, do you offer a FedRAMP solution?
That's a good question. That is a little above my purview line. I'm going to have to, if you can get for me, please, Bryce, who asked that question and their contact info. I would need to actually ask that question. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and we'll follow up with that question.
Yeah.
Can we build scorecards for agents working a specific client portfolio? We have a very specific requirements for some clients. So how granular can we make a scorecard, assuming we can build our own?
You can absolutely build your own. We can build them for you, of course, to your specifications, but everything in the entire workforce optimization application is completely front-ended. It's not all behind the scenes. Those filters that are available for creating the words to search for, phrases to search for, they're available to your managers. We can build to your specification. We can build collaboratively with you so that you're learning how to build those things in the future, and then you can build yourself. Whichever way works best for your organization works best for us. There's no upcharge for us building it out for you versus you building it yourself. But we want the solution to be impactful. And if you bring a new client on and they have a certain script requirement that you now need to look for, do you want to put a ticket in to a third-party application and then hopefully be able to start looking for that script adherence in a week for your new client? Or do you want to be able to reach out to your account team at TCN and have them build that for you that day? Or you could build it yourself right then and there and then start testing it and make sure that it works. So there's complete customization. And again, in the scorecards, whatever granularity you need in that scorecard, it's fully customizable. You build your own categories, you build your own questions. Those are attached to the skill profiles of your agent. So when you have a specific client, they would have specific skill profiles, typically your agent. So you can specify a scorecard only for that skill profile based on the category and create then a granular card for that specific client, and it will only bring back calls for that client based on the skill profile. So yes, it's a long way of saying yes, but yes.
Okay, great, thanks. The next question is, will there be an ability to generate reports weekly, monthly on multiple reps to ID trends in groups of reps, teams, as our QA team does QA evaluations?
Yes, and in two ways. We're definitely looking into our business intelligence platform to be able to provide certain data reporting. And when it comes to that quality and risk, the scorecard that we have today is a manual scorecard, very short term, near future. The auto evaluation, and that's where you would be able to create a scorecard based on positive and negative flags that you're able to build in VAs. So, and a quick example would be right party contact, mini Miranda given, that's a positive. Right party contact, mini Miranda not provided, that's a negative. And you can repeat that with, say, a call recording disclosure, any state specific or client specific, a positive and negative outcome. It will then go through those calls of those agents and grade the calls based on the positive and negative and provide you with an overall risk score for that particular call. And then reporting in the future will then be able to, if Scott had 10 calls in auto evaluation, it can aggregate my scores together down the road as well. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Scott. Let us know if you have any further questions. There's another one. It says, will the screen recording option record while the agent is not on a call, or will it mirror the call recording timing?
That's a great question that honestly I don't know the answer to.
You.
Thank you, Dion.
I'll answer that one for you.
I appreciate
that.
Yeah,
we will be able to. No, that's good. It's a setting that you can decide whether you want to do on call and off call, so that you also can see what they are doing between calls.
Okay, so sounds like it'll be an option. Very good. I don't believe, do we have another question still, or is that the last of the questions? Oh, hold on one second. Sorry, hold on a second. Got a question coming in right now. To follow up on the FedRAMP question, is your solution hosted on-prem or is it cloud-based? If cloud-based, you have an on-prem solution to avoid the FedRAMP requirement.
It's on-prem, with integrated with the cloud engines that we have.
Yeah, it sounds like what we might be a good option is to follow up with the FedRAMP questions and make sure we address all of those.
Yep.
Let's see, do you have a roadmap with timelines for some of the new features?
I'm going to defer to Dion because Dion is.
Yeah, auto evaluation.
They invent. So I'm going to not speak out of turn.
No, so auto evaluation and screen recording is on the roadmap for this quarter.
All right, perfect. I appreciate that, and we'll gather up. There's some additional questions, but we'll see if what we can answer at the end. Want to turn some time over to Dion, and then if we don't get the questions answered, continue to submit your questions. If we don't get them answered during the webinar, we'll make sure we'll get an email out to you with additional information. Dion, I'll go ahead and turn some time over to you so we can touch base on workforce management. Appreciate the questions so far, and just continue to add them, and we'll get to them.
Thank you very much, guys.
Okay, so we don't have a lot of time left. So what I'm gonna, the workforce, as you guys would know, workforce management can be, there's a lot of sides to it. It can have a lot of functionality in terms of talking through that. What I'm gonna try to do in the next half an hour is just quickly give you guys a structural overview of what we have in the product, show you a little bit in the product as well, talk about the concepts within that environment, field your questions. I think the big thing that we would like to do on the other side of this, you know, we've got this out there, and if you guys would like to see how it works, we're really willing to open it up on your accounts, help you to set it up, and from a starting perspective, and see how things are going. I think so. Just keep that in mind, and so I'm not going to try to show the full product down to the nitty-gritty level, but give you the conceptuals as we go through. So our solution ultimately resides on 5 principles. So the history and what we call skills profiles. So as you know, the history determines, in terms of the predictive environment, what we try to do is we look at the history to see what type of work has historically arrived in your call center. Based on that, we step to the next one and say, okay, right. So based on that, what's the workload? What's the workload? What do we think we're going to look into the future, and then use that as the basis for the scheduling. In the end of the day, how many agents will we need to cover that workload? And then adherence ultimately just comes back to the point, is like, are all your agents doing what they're supposed to do in accordance with what you scheduled them to do, and will the system let you know if they don't? In a nutshell. So, and then on the right hand side, there's a little thing called configuration. So configuration is really, in the end of the day, the whole workforce management environment is really based on your personal environment, your personal rules. So we've tried within our environment to make it as simple as possible for you to start up with very little configuration, or if you want to go down to the lowest of lowest level, you can also do that. And being able to set everything up in a specific way that is very, very unique to your call center. So I'm gonna quickly talk about these things. So in our structured environment, we structure it around, there's a client, there's some locations, and the client can be your client. So you can have multiple clients with multiple locations. They've got programs, and they've got agents with skills that can sit in different locations, and that they want to use within a specific environment. What happens with that is we allocate those through what we call a skills profile. I'll give you a little bit more detail on that, but really what it boils down to is the way that TCN looks at calls is that we allocate skills for every call that come in, and right at the end, based on the skill load of the call, we will determine what is the best agent within that, and over time we'll keep track of that. With that in mind, we will then take your historical data and bring that in terms of the number of calls, number of based on the skills profile, your characteristics, your typical characteristics that we all know about. And we will then do what a draft. We can play with draft. You can do multiple drafts in terms of how you want to play with them, and then ultimately choose one of those forecasts, and then say, okay, well, this is the workload that I want to put into it. So in terms of what I said in terms of the pillars, is like on the left hand side is where you just configure the system. In the middle is where you say, okay, now I've got to do my skills profile management, make sure that I understand it, make sure that I bring it back to my call center's requirements, and then I forecast on that. Then in the bigger scheme of things, sort of the end-to-end process is now you take your skills profile, your forecasting, configuration management, and then you schedule. And once you're scheduled, adherence management is really the next level that you want to go to on that. Okay, so the principles of our forecasting methodology is very simple. You've got a historical data range, and within that historical data range, you can determine whether you want to use it all or a subset of that down here as your training range. Well, while we're working on that, and while we're working on a forecasting environment, we break it up into 3 sections. We take a subset of your training range for to train the data on, then we keep a set of it for comparative perspective, and based on that, then we will do a forecast. That's your first line there. We'll do a forecast, and that gives you the ability to actually compare the forecast with the actual experience that you've had within your call center. And at any point in time, you've got your forecast range that you will look at, and you will then decide if you're happy, which one of your drafts you're happy with, and then if you do that, the system will do a final forecast, and we will extract the forecast range out of that, and you will have your workload set up for you. Okay, so in a nutshell, talking a little bit about that overview, skills profiles is the things that we talk about. I'll take you into the product a little bit with that. History management, you should be able to look at your history, and if there's anything that's anomalies, you should be able to change that and adjust it if necessary. If you look at your forecasting, our first version that we've got out really use a pattern-based environment where we can take multiple years, find your patterns, and these patterns are intraday, intra-week, intra-month, intra-year. And with that, we will start you up and say, right, we will then recognize the patterns of the past, find the pattern based that the best fit pattern within your call center data and your workload data, and use that pattern then to go and physically predict your calls. And then at that point in time, you will be able to, as you go into forecasting, as always, you will be able to adjust. If you want to make tweaks to that, you can save drafts and. So there's a ability to really massage that to your level. So let me jump into that for a bit. So if we look at the whole forecasting environment, we start with setting your parameters. You can choose down to what is your interval. So you have 15-minute, 30 intervals. What's your historical data? How much training data do you want to use? What's your test ranges? And all this is configurable for your call center per se. The next step would be then let's look at your skill profile. So as I said, over time, we look at the skills that's allocated to calls, and the reality is that as you do that over time, there's a set of calls that require the same profile, and these are the profiles that we start building up, and sort of in a cohort group, we will see where the percentages are. Some of them, will be higher, some of them will be lower, and this then gives you the ability to say, okay, these calls all look the same. They need the same skills, and then this is the sort of characteristics of average talk time, wait time, abandon time that we can allocate to those calls as we go along. And this is all the system determines that for you. The cool thing about that if you, let me just get this ugly little Magodi out of the way. Then the system will also allow you, if you want to make changes to the proficiencies and say, I want to change my averages because I have different environment, or I can get back if I've changed my averages manually and I come back and say, well, that didn't work too well. I want to go back to my calculated averages. You always can come back here and just press a button and get your skill profiles set up. So now basically what we have is we know how they look in terms of the groups. Then in the next stage, your historical data management means that I can go have a look at my data at the bottom here. You can see all the averages. You can see all the data that you need to do, and you can now go and zoom in on any portion of your data. And if there was something that you really wanted to see, and there's a certain date you want to go, you can go in there. Adjusting at the bottom, always in accordance with your selection, that comes along. You can actually get to the point where you can also then start looking at your characteristics at the same time, and we can either use static characteristics, or we can take your characteristics in the same way that we do with the calls, and we can predict them per period. You can also then do multiple edits. Now, in a multiple edit, you can adjust a period of time and say, I think this day or this period, I want to change it. There's ways to change those numbers up or down, and that helps you to say there's some anomalies in my history. I am now going to adjust it to get those anomalies sorted out. Right. So with that in mind, so now once you've got your historical data and you're happy to move to the forward one, then you can say, right, let's go do our a forecast for one of my skill profiles. I'm to run this one quickly through. And what this is now doing is I'm using the historical data to predict for me a forecast period, which I have decided to work for. This is the next. This is sort of from the 16th of April forward, next 4 weeks. I can then automatically see at this point in time, I can see what the system tells me, what the load's going to be, what is the calls over that period of time. And if I zoom in, it will give me the same capability within this forecast period to then say, okay, I can adjust this. At the bottom here is your time of day. These are all of them are specific your patterns, and you can actually adjust them. In our next version that comes up, which is actually going to come out in 2 weeks, this will be a little bit bigger. When you click on it, it will show you on the whole screen, so you don't have to fiddle around with small little things here on the side, but your patterns are really within this environment. So these patterns, once you're happy with them, you can go and save them as a template. You can save them as a draft, or you can just save them as both. So when you've played around with this world, you can do that. I've already played with some drafts prior to the demo, and played around a little bit, saw that there was some anomalies because this takes into consideration how all the Aprils looks in the past, and they were a little bit low. So we decided that we're going to up that a little bit. There's a draft that I can put on top of that, switch it off, switch it on, and decide, and then see what is the impact of that. To the left-hand side, look at the metrics, and I can be able to say, well, let's take this draft, save it up there, run a forecast on that, and then ultimately at the bottom here, once you're done with your analysis, I can see also what is my current forecast, the one that's already in the system. I do have a current forecast there. I can switch it off, and then I can see what's again, what if analysis, a lot of flexibility in here to play with, create a new forecast, and now you're ready to go. And you can then go back and say, right, once you've done that, let me just go down, I think it's this one. I can also go look at my forecast. Once the forecast is in place, I can play around with my forecast, and I can still adjust it. So we always leave the flexibility that from experience, from what happening, if there's something that went a little bit wrong, you'll see here, there's a little bit of an anomaly here. Can we do something about it? Then you can go in here and do multi-edit and do the same thing and adjust that with what you want to do. Okay, so in a nutshell, this is forecasting, comes from your setup, come through skill profiles, historical management, into the actual forecast and also the management of that afterwards. Right, let's get back into the demo. So really, configuration management is link your operational entities, clients, locations, and programs in a way that makes sense to you for your call center. The next thing is then going to be look at the preferences. And when we talk about open times, all the preferences, here is the principle of adherence. And I'll quickly show that with you in the product. Adherence means that you don't have to set it at every level. If this cascades down in your structure, you set it at one level and the structure will inherit it. If you have to get to a point where a specific environment, like an agent that sits way down there in a group that's got unique rules and that goes with it, you can then take that agent and set the rules different from him, and that will then take precedence over the inherited environment of the specifically that what the call center gave him. Agent availability, same thing, open times, availability. We'll see that in the environment, the proficiencies that we're going to require for programs at different levels. And this really comes down to the bottom, and then the activities. So from an activities are the things that you can do. Your on-call activity is always that's a given activity that will always there, always stay. It's a default activity. You cannot do anything with it. But in this case, like we talk about lunch and tea, you can bring that in, and that is specific things that comes into your call center, and you will set up the shift rules in accordance with that. Configuring the shift, the structure, and the placement rules, and then ultimately also being able to allocate agents. Right. Let's start up here. Yeah. So in the product itself, we talked about activities. So activities, we have additional activities of lunch and breaks, and we can then also say how do they assign to the structure that we've created. We have the top-down structure, and in this case, we just let them go through, and every one of these nodes in your structure have inherited them. But you can also get to the point where you decide that certain nodes don't have to inherit that structure. I will talk about this little 119 there at the top in a bit, but let's move to the next concept. So here is we are at the highest. We are at a call center level that's for a specific client. We've set up some weekly patterns for the call center. Now does this, in this case, how is the patterns of where are we allowed to put schedules? And everything, as you see, there's the light red at the bottom. The assumption is if you don't say something is going to happen in that environment, we expect that it's not going to happen, and the red says it will be closed in that environment. So again, making the workload a little bit easier. And through here, you can see how this pattern is going to play out. Through here, you can do the same with the calendar events. You've got, and this is important, so you can put calendar events in here, like if you've got meetings and stuff like that, you can put the meetings in so that we can take cognizance of that on groups and optimize around them and making sure that they come to the correct place. Okay. Next step is now we can see how for specifically this region, we set the open times up. You see there's no events in their calendar or weekly patterns, but there's already a result. And so we know that this is the inheritance in a nutshell. It's inherited everything from the bottom up, and now you can get to the point where if you want to change something, you can do it. But if you are happy with that, it's ease of use, and you don't have to worry too much about that. So in this case, we set up a central region. So your location is a region. It covers more than one environment. And just to show that your agent, your group, that is now the account support group that runs in that region, they also actually have all the inheritance that they need to work through the system. Okay. Agent groups, simple. These agent groups sit in 3 different places. Actually, two in Dallas and 1 in San Antonio, as an example. There's no one currently. I didn't put any in the Dallas environment just for the sake of the demo. And for now, what we can do, you can go in here and decide. We also have an agent manager, which is on the side where you can do a lot more than in here. But while you're in a group and you go into a group, you can start looking at agents in the group. And from your call center, we have a powerful search facilities inside our table structures. You will see these tables pop up everywhere. It's very easy to hone in on specific people and environment, and then you can choose your additional agents from here and add them if you want to the system. Okay. Right, skills proficiencies. Again, we allow you flexibility. So that account support group needs certain skills. In this case, we said They need the accounting, English, and Spanish skill. And specifically from that perspective, it means that I can figure out where these skills come from in two ways. When I can manually determine what they are, or I can just say this account support group is associated with a specific skill profile. And then if I choose the skill profile, it will bring the skill of that profile and the workload again into the system. And then you will have an inherited skill that is associated with this group. Okay, and based in this environment, once you're in this group, there's also, these are the two things that are really the skill proficiencies and the shift templates are really the differentiators that you have of this node. When you get to this node level, that's the difference. So from a shift template perspective, we can say that you can put parameters in. You can again say this template, the shift template, how does it look? Where is it allowed to operate at what time? And then from an activities perspective, you can then build a shift activity with minimum and maximum loads inside here, that whenever these are the rules that will be set up, and when they happen inside the scheduler will take all these rules into consideration for you to be able to make the right schedules. Now, as you've seen, this little button here on the side, this you'll see it in many places as we go up and down the call center structure. That squiggly little thing means that I can do diagnostics. I can, because there's a lot of rules that you set up here and you may be able not to keep track of them. The system allows you to run diagnostics. By clicking on that, it will run diagnostics wherever you are, or it can run it on the call center level, and it will come back with things that says this is a no-no, this is like a maybe, or it's okay. That's how the rule system ultimately within this environment works. So you are, although it may look complicated, but the system will assist you in making sure that you don't put things up that is that contends with one another. I'm quickly just going to jump into one of the agents here. So in this environment, sort of what you can see here, and here is what we call activity rules and skill rules, right? So activity rules and skill rules is things that tells you specifically an agent, you take it, how long can they be on a call? How many periods can they, or how long can they be specifically? How much time will it take before a break is taken? How much time before another break is taken? How much time in a 24-hour period? So this is very flexible within this environment to say what is the rules that puts a limit on how you can use these the rules that how you can use the agent. The same with the skill rules. So you can say whether it's a mandatory skill, whether it's a non-mandatory skill, if it's, and what is the level that you need. And unless something has changed and you want to come into this lower level, this is the ability to actually adjust. But if you want to stay with what is on the group level and what is on the process level, you can stay with that. You don't have to do this, but it does give you the ability to really get granular if you need to. Let me just check here. So that's okay. We've covered that, and I think we're okay we've covered most of the configuration world. Just quickly in a nutshell, when it comes to scheduling, you set up your multi-target optimization models and service levels and your coverage models to be able to say what are you targeting now that you've got, you know what your workload is, we know what all your rules are for putting agents into specific shifts, and then from that perspective you will set it up and set those coverage objectives, and then we get into the real rule-based and legislative and compliance and multi-target models and shift patterns, and it just becomes to a point where there's a variety of things that we take into consideration for you with the engine in the background to be able to find what is the optimal in shift patterns for you. The intraday shift editing, you know, these are the sort of bells and whistles things that you need to do. You know, as a manager, you would have to be able to copy, delete, split, reassign and swap, block, unlock, and check agent availability, because on a daily basis, if you've got a dynamic call center, this is something that you do every day, you do all the time, and you would not like the system to inhibit you from doing that. But some of the call centers that we've had with some of them has got very, a very rigid environment. We stay with that. We're not going to change every day. We don't do this. We just want people to rock up, sit in their environment and make sure that they do what they're supposed to do. Again, can we do the flexibility? Yes. Can we not? Can we stay with the rigidity? Yes. That's the environment for us. And in the end of the day is just to be able to say, okay, what is the performance that you, from a scheduling perspective, are going to get, and how does that play? So I'm just going to give you a quick view of the scheduler. So here, what happens is that you've got two things. You've got published schedules and you have specific draft schedules. Again, the same concept as in the forecaster. You can create multiple drafts. You can play them off against one another. You can then also see how their metrics plays off against one another in the process, and really giving you the flexibility. And then inside of that, it's like being able to then split these shifts, swap them out, take them from one person to another. These are sort of all the people and the shifts optimization within the Dallas group, being able to then do what you need to do in there to do the day-to-day intraday management from a shift perspective. And then ultimately, if you talk adherence, what adherence does, it compares the agent's actions, through actions from the call center environment to these planned actions, and it will give you, it allows you to set up the rules, set up alerts, and then as you go along, these things will come back to the managers to make sure that they that the agents are complying with what they need to do. So I think the biggest thing from our environment is, if you're serious about workforce management, it's not something that we have to teach you, to tell you why is it important. I think for us is that, our approach is flexible, it's easy to use, and hopefully you've seen that from the front ends that we've showed you today. But the big thing, it's fully integrated. You don't have to worry about two systems talking to one another and not having a lot of having to do a lot of things and trying to get two companies to work together to make things work, and export, imports, and those type of things. But I think really, and it gives you the ability to do the two big things is the integrated and the what if scenario. One of the environments is if you are, if you're in an environment where you really have to do a lot of RFPs to get new business, the scheduling environment helps you to put those out there, do predictions, look at your FTEs, plan for, and being able to do a proper financial analysis based on what we can give you from that perspective. That's in a nutshell. So let's Bryce, let's see if there's any questions. That was quick.
That was quick, but you did a great job as usual. I think we quite often put pressure on you to really roll these out. It's a lot to cover, a lot of functionality, so it's sometimes hard to cram it all in. There are a couple of questions that we have left over and wanted to touch on those very quickly. So this gets back to the scorecards. Will it ever be possible to automate call evaluations?
Yes, I mean, that's the auto evaluations that's coming, I believe. That's what we're talking about. Yeah, but the nutshell of it, yes.
Yes, that's coming here in the next rollout, correct?
Couple of weeks, yeah.
Yeah. And then do you have documentation and other training resources for the scorecard and voice analytics functionality?
We have inside the products we typically, I don't have that one open for them now, but we typically have a substantial learning pages within that. With the latest learning, now we've just done a major upgrade to our learning pages, so that should be able. We are focusing on the fact that inside, on the right hand side, you click on the little learning button, and you will get everything you need to be able to run what's inside that screen. And you can also then export that in if you need to take it offline.
Great. One more question for you, and then we'll close out. And any other leftover questions, we'll go ahead and make sure that an account manager reaches out to you. Will the screen record
Thanks.
when a payment is being processed? So is it capturing credit card information?
So at this point in time, that we have the ability, or that's in the version 2, we will have the ability to take that out and to provide a certain portion of the screen and say that it should blank it out through that. But I think that's not going to be in it from that. But that is one that I've got to go back to the techies because we discussed it. I can't remember what's the right answer for that one.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Dion. And thank you, Scott, for your presentation. So a lot of great information. We appreciate everyone being on the webinar today. We hope it was beneficial to you to gain some more insight as to what we have with the workforce optimization, some security, performance, compliance, omni-channel environment, and then also with the workforce management, being able to look at forecasting, scheduling, adherence. A lot of great tools for you. If you're not currently a TCN client, you can go into the demo request on the website and ask questions there, or reach out to us and we'll get you in touch with the person that would oversee your account. We appreciate everyone being here today. Thank you for your time and thank you for the presentations, and we'll catch you on the next one as we continue to cover some of these areas that are of concern to you as call center agents. Thank you.